Pirates are cool, right? No, wrong, because when they're not sailing the seven seas, drinking rum, or burying chests full of doubloons on desert islands, they spend their time causing harm to the video games industry. Piracy costs game developers billions every year. Billions that could be spent on making games even better, taking risks on new and innovative ideas, and paying the hard-working staff that pour their hearts and souls into these wonderful creations. As such, many developers program anti-piracy measures into their games, which will attempt to block or ruin the experience for those who've picked up the title illegitimately. Just because you're putting a stop to unlawful activity doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself though. And so for this video, we're looking at instances of developers having a bit of fun with their copy protection. Sometimes the fun was at the illicit user's expense, sometimes the copy protection itself ended up being pretty fun, and sometimes the fun was just had by all. Piracy is still a serious issue, but that doesn't stop the industry from having a sense of humor about it. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 times video game copy protection was actually fun. Number 10. Serious Sam 3 BFE. Crow Team's 2011 shooter sequel, Serious Sam 3 BFE, or Buffet, provides a fast-paced FPS gaming hit for those who just want to run around and blast things with over-the-top weapons. The game pits the titular time-traveling protagonist against hordes of aliens and other abominations, ranging from those headless guys with bombs who are somehow constantly screaming despite having no head, to hulking scorpion-like entities known as arachnoids. Pay particular attention to that last one though, as those who pirated the game would likely end up becoming extremely familiar with his smaller, faster, invincible little brother. That's right, if your copy of Serious Sam 3 BFE is pirated, it will spawn a Sam-sized arachnoid creature that is ridiculously fast, cannot be killed, and will hound the player until they've been reduced to chunky scorpion food. Now you might think that constantly being hunted by a relentless, invincible creature doesn't sound like very much fun at all. Well, firstly, I'd like to draw your attention to Resident Evil 3 and its ilk, and secondly, I'd like to remind you that gamers are an unusual bunch, and there's a subsection out there that just love to be punished, and the challenge that this zippy bug boy offers is right up their street. DRM-enabled Super Scorpion speedruns? Yep, they are actually a real thing. Number 9. Skullgirls. One-on-one fighting games aren't generally associated with deep thinking. That's not to say you don't need an incredibly agile mind as well as agile fingers to be a top-level fighting game aficionado, but the middle of heated, frantic matches with combo meters ticking up and health bars ticking down isn't really the best time for philosophy. That being said, hand-drawn 2D fighter Skullgirls offers players plenty of button-mashing action to get their teeth into, but also gives them something to muse over as well. You see, upon completing the game, some players might find themselves posed with this particular brain teaser. What is the square root of a fish? Now feel free to mull over this scaly mind bender all you like in private, but be careful about posting your thoughts online, as doing so will expose you as a thief, a freebooter, a trickster, a fraud. You see, only pirated copies of Skullgirls will throw up this question, so that those who obtain the game illegally would expose themselves online. It was a trap, and like the fish in question, some players took the bait. Definitely more fun for the developers, this one, especially when they get to call out pirates online, but I suppose there is potential for the pirates to have fun too, if contemplating aquatic mathematics is their thing. Number 8. Alan Wake. If you feel like you might have run into a pirate on the street, but you're not completely sure, there are certain dependable ways to identify them. Peg legs, parrots on shoulders, and hair on fire are all surefire ways of knowing whether you're dealing with piracy. Perhaps the most iconic piece of pirate paraphernalia, though, is the eye patch. Oh, and bonus points if there's a skull and crossbones on it, rad. Alan Wake is a decidedly non-piratical game, originally released in 2010 for the Xbox 360. 360. A dark and atmospheric horror action title set in the northwest corner of America, the game's story was heavily influenced by the works of prolific author Stephen King, and the gameplay mostly consists of skulking through spooky woods, fending off light-fearing maniacs with your handgun and flashlight combo. It's a great game with a great story that relies heavily on its dark and unsettling mood. Those who have obtained their copy of the game illegally, however, can expect to have this mood completely shattered by Mr. Wake constantly wearing a joke shop grade pirate eye patch complete with skull and crossbones. The game is otherwise completely playable, no crashes, dead ends, or invincible bosses, but just has that constant reminder that you are a filthy pirate and should be made to walk the plank. Number 7. Michael Jackson: The Experience. The organisers of the 2010 South Africa World Cup would probably like the event to be remembered for the quality of football and the showcase of the nation's varied culture. Unfortunately, most people will remember it for the constant buzzing, blaring sound of the infamous vuvuzela, an extremely loud plastic horn that was tooted incessantly at every match. What's this got to do with the king of pop, though? Well, Michael Jackson: The Experience was a video game released in 2010, the same year as the noisiest ever World Cup, and its developers clearly took inspiration from said event when thinking up ideas for their copy protection. If you played a pirated copy of Michael Jackson: The Experience for the DS, the songs would hilariously be drowned out by vuvuzelas blaring. The earache-inducing tooting overlaid onto a recognizable MJ song is an experience indeed, meaning the pirated version of the game still lives up to its name at least. Alas, the fun factor here is mitigated somewhat by the fact that they also removed the on-screen input commands, making the game impossible to play unless you've got another DS with another copy playing perfectly in sync, and that seems like a lot of effort just to hear top MJ songs performed alongside aggravating tuneless trumpets. Still, where there's a will, there's a way. Number 6. Ooga Booga. Ooga Booga, which I don't really like saying out loud, was a very strange game. It provided an enjoyable multiplayer experience on Sega's online-enabled Dreamcast console, and featured an outrageous sense of humor on top of a bold Polynesian-inspired visual style. The game puts players in the role of one of a selection of tribal leaders, and sets them loose in various volcanic arenas before letting cartoony carnage and combat commence. If you had a legitimate copy, that is. Those who acquired it by illegal means were in for a somewhat different gameplay experience. Pirated versions would start up, but instead of proceeding to the game as normal, players would be treated to the sight of a rather chunky and untrustworthy-looking blue-clad pirate, complete with cutlass and shoulder-mounted bird life. A piracy detected message would be shown, and all button inputs would cause the pirate to dance. See? You might not be able to play the actual arena-based multiplayer mayhem, but you can make the funny pirate dance. And that's fun too, right? Well, jokes aside, someone obviously thought so, because subsequent unofficial releases that bypassed the copy protection still decided to leave this thing in, making it skippable by pressing the start button. Whew, dancing pirates and the full game? Man, these illegal Ooga Booga acquirers have got it better than anyone else. Number 5. Armor 2. Alright, this one might not sound like it's much fun to anyone, but we all like those sections in certain games where our protagonist gets drunk, right? Well, our next entry gives piratical players that feeling all the time. Armor 2 is a military simulation video game that mostly keeps things pretty serious. A tactical shooter with real-time strategy elements, it's a title for people that want their combat simulation as realistic as possible, and earned a reputation for being pretty difficult as a result. Utilizing a system known as Fade, Armor 2 players who perhaps didn't purchase their copy through official channels found themselves faced with an even more pronounced uphill struggle, with Fade gradually reducing the player character's accuracy until they literally couldn't hit the side of a barn. Seriously, there are barns in the game, so you could try this if you like. On top of this, Fade would bring in an undulating woozy effect, as if the soldier had imbibed a few too many sips of moonshine prior to the mission, or was at least in the process of experiencing an adrenaline-induced dizzy spell. And just to cap off this drunken wildfiring escapade, players would find their avatar randomly turning into a bird. I'm now starting to think that something a bit stronger than moonshine was involved here. Number 4. Prince of Persia. This next one is fun for those who like to think outside the box while figuring out tense puzzles. The original Prince of Persia was released in 1989 and welcomed players into its Arabian Nights-inspired world of danger and adventure as they attempt to save a princess from the treacherous vizier. This means lots of platforming, sword fighting, and avoiding unpleasant traps, all while the timer ticks down towards the princess's execution. At one point in the game, the player would reach a room with a few platforms, a locked door, and an arrangement of vials, each denoted by a letter of the alphabet. In Prince of Persia, as in real life, it's best not to go around drinking unidentified fluids you find lying around, because most of the vials contain poison. So how do you find out which one you need to drink to open the door? Well, you just need to do what you always used to do when stuck on old games. Check the manual. As was common in those days, Prince of Persia used its manual to guard against illegal copying, sending players off to find a specific letter on a specific line on a specific page in the game's accompanying literature. A bit of a fun treasure hunt for legitimate players, and a frustrating roadblock for freebooters. Ha! Foiled again, pirates. Number 3. Wolfenstein 3D. Back in the early 90s, game developers had already come up with lots of clever and interesting ways to counteract the gaming community's piratical tendencies. Whether this was by, as we've just seen, including in-game sections that required the physical manual to progress, or by anti-piracy programming, it was definitely already a thing. However, with Wolfenstein 3D, the grandpappy of the FPS genre, developers id Software didn't bother with all that and resorted to baseless threats instead. The seminal shooter, which featured longtime protagonist BJ Blazkowicz's Nazi-blasting debut, had no copy protection to speak of at all, instead featuring a carefully worded threat that basically amounted to, "That's a very nice hard drive you've got there, be a shame if something were to happen to it." Again, this one was probably more fun for the developers, but the way it's worded is enough to raise a chuckle if you're in the know, and the fact that it definitely would have put the willies up many a would-be corsair who found themselves fearing for all their precious files brings a smile to everyone else's face. Now, if only there was some way id Software could have gone through with their hard drive erasing threat, like having John Romero jump out with a really powerful magnet or something. Oh, that'd teach them not to steal games. Number 2. Ace Attorney Investigations 2. One for the linguists out there now. Those who hail from the Republic of Borginia will have absolutely no problem getting around the copy protection of Ace Attorney Investigations 2 on the DS, since pirated copies replace all the text in-game with Borginian. However, considering the Republic of Borginia is completely fictional, this is going to cause a problem for anyone who tries to acquire the game illegally. In the game, and indeed in fellow Capcom title Dino Crisis before it, Borginia is a nation in northern Europe, famous for an item called the Borginian cocoon, a controlled commodity that is both a deadly poison and a cure for otherwise incurable diseases. The proud nation has its own language, which in text form takes on the appearance of a series of symbols along the lines of hieroglyphics or wingdings. As far as we're aware, there's no cipher or secret alphabet involved here, so those hoping for a translation will be left wanting. For the rest of us though, it's an entertaining way to confuse and befuddle would-be swashbucklers. Knowing pirates, they probably think it's some sort of code that leads to hidden treasure. Some of them are probably still out there now, sailing the high seas in search of the fabled shores of Borginia. Silly pirates. And number 1, Crisis Warhead. Standalone Crisis expansion, Crisis Warhead, puts players in the high-tech boots of a nanotechnology-equipped operative sent to investigate an alien craft on a North Korean-occupied island. hand, and things quickly devolve into frenzied battle with bullets flying everywhere. If you're playing a legitimate copy, that is. Those that acquired their copy illegally might find that their ammunition takes on a slightly more feathery form. Pirated copies of Crisis Warhead replace all bullets, both friendly and enemy, with chickens. Just pull the trigger on your assault rifle and watch with confused delight as a stream of domesticated birds emerge from the barrel. It's not just bullets that got the chicken treatment either, as rockets, grenades, and more are all replaced with hapless hens. Now, hilarious a visual as this is, it does kind of make the game unplayable, as the chickens cause no damage, knocking over enemies instead. Which is silly, if you ask me. I, for one, think that if you bombard someone with enough poultry, they'll go down eventually. I mean, surely one of those beaks or talons is gonna stick into something vital, right? We'll let this slight break in realism slide though, as this has got to be one of the most entertaining copy protection methods we've ever seen. After all, until you've operated a machine gun turret that unleashes a torrent of confused foul at an equally baffled enemy, you haven't really lived. You heard it here first, everyone. TripleJump endorses video game piracy. We don't. We do not endorse video game piracy.